They believed it was merely a clumsy reconnaissance aircraft. Minutes later, entire squadrons were engulfed in flames. The Lockheed P-38 Lightning was far more than just another fighter. It represented a revolution in aerial combat. Watch carefully, as what unfolds next will alter your perception of the Pacific War forever. On December 27, 1942, the tropical sun of New Guinea rose over Port Moresby, casting long shadows across the airfield. Beneath torn camouflage netting stood a lineup of peculiar silhouettes. Twin-tailed machines unlike anything seen in the Pacific until then. Their aluminum exteriors glinted faintly in the early light, while ground crews rushed with fuel hoses and ammunition belts. To most onlookers, they seemed ungainly, even clumsy, like mechanical beasts cleaved in two. Yet within hours, they would transform the very essence of aerial warfare. From the north, the roar of engines grew more intense. Japanese formation Zeros, Oscars, and Vals swept across the sky in disciplined formations, seasoned veterans of Pearl Harbor and the Dutch East Indies. For 13 months, they had dominated the Pacific, with the Mitsubishi A6M0 feared as the unrivaled predator of the skies. American pilots had learned harsh lessons in P-39s and P-40s, where trying to turn with a zero meant certain doom. On this morning, Japanese commanders anticipated another routine mission: escort bombers, scatter the defenders, and return in triumph. However, lurking above the jungle canopy was something unprecedented: the Lockheed P-38 Lightning. With its twin engines snarling through turbo superchargers, the P-38 could dive faster than any Zero dared to pursue. Its concentrated firepower cannons and machine guns mounted in the nose spoke with a singular, devastating voice. The Americans had a different strategy: strike from altitude, hit hard, and vanish into the sun before the enemy could respond. As Captain Thomas Lynch led his squadron into the dive, Richard Bong, a young farm boy from Wisconsin, followed closely behind. What followed would leave Japanese pilots in disbelief, watching their wreckage tumble into the sea and ignite in flames. The era of the Zero was drawing to a close. To comprehend why this moment became a pivotal turning point in the Pacific skies, we must delve into the story that brought the Lightning into combat. The skies of the Pacific in 1941 belonged to Japan. When the Mitsubishi A6M0 first emerged over China and later at Pearl Harbor, it seemed less like a machine and more like a supernatural force, with a turning radius that defied belief and a climb rate unmatched by any Allied fighter. The Zero carved its legend through a series of overwhelming victories in the early months of the Pacific War. American and British pilots, flying outdated P-40 Warhawks and Buffaloes, faced a nightmare they could hardly counter. Dogfighting, the art of spiraling tightly until one fighter slipped behind the other, favored the Japanese every time. Tradition led to slaughter. This dominance was no coincidence. Japan's air doctrine had been forged in the crucible of China and honed by naval strategists obsessed with the decisive battle Khe Sanh. According to this vision, air power existed to protect the fleet and annihilate the enemy before they could approach Japanese shores. To achieve this, the Imperial Navy heavily invested in elite pilot training. Their aviators were not merely soldiers, but craftsmen of destruction, rigorously drilled in aerobatics and precision gunnery. By late 1941, they represented perhaps the most formidable cadre of fighter pilots on the planet. Across the ocean, American doctrine was far less romantic. The U.S. Army Air Forces were constrained by outdated beliefs, viewing fighters primarily as escorts for bombers rather than independent hunters. Pilots were trained on sluggish aircraft like the Bell P-39 era Cobra, which struggled to reach the high altitudes where combat increasingly unfolded. Losses in the Philippines and the Dutch East Indies proved catastrophic. making it clear that something fundamentally different was required: an aircraft and a philosophy capable of dismantling the Zero's stranglehold. That answer had already started to take form in California long before Pearl Harbor. Lockheed engineers, led by the brilliant Clarence Kelly Johnson, envisioned a revolutionary fighter that defied all tradition. Instead of a single engine, it would utilize two. Instead of mounting guns on the wings, all would be concentrated in the nose, eliminating convergence issues. The aircraft would not depend on turning battles, but on speed, altitude, and firepower. It would hunt vertically, diving and climbing where the Zero could not follow. The concept was audacious, some even labeled it absurd, yet the Lockheed P38 Lightning emerged from that radical thinking. By late 1942, the Lightning's arrival in the Southwest Pacific coincided with a desperate moment. The Allies were clinging to a fragile line across New Guinea and the Solomon Islands. Japanese bombers assaulted bases with near impunity, while Zero escorts decimated defenders. Morale plummeted. American pilots needed not just a new weapon, but a new approach to warfare. Intelligence officers whispered about the unusual twin-boom craft that might shift the balance for the men on the ground at Port Moresby. The Lightning appeared almost mythical, a harbinger of salvation or a steel beast poised to prove itself. The stage was set. On one side stood Japan, confident and battle-hardened, guided by a doctrine that had secured victory after victory. On the other stood the United States, bruised and bloodied, but now equipped with a weapon unlike any before. The clash of these philosophies, the horizontal dance of the Zero against the vertical thunder of the Lightning, would determine who ruled the skies over the Pacific, and in December 1942, those twin shadows rising from New Guinea would begin to rewrite the rules of aerial warfare forever. The Lockheed P-38 Lightning was not born from tradition, but from defiance of it. When Clarence Kelly Johnson and his design team first drafted its outline in the late 1930s, the concept appeared almost alien. Two engines mounted on twin booms linked by a central nacelle for the cockpit. It was a fighter that looked unlike any other, a machine that seemed more an experiment than a weapon. Yet every unusual contour had a purpose, and every detail spoke to a new philosophy of warfare. At its core were two Allison V1710 engines, each generating over 1,000 horsepower. With turbo superchargers powering them, the Lightning could maintain performance at altitudes where most fighters struggled. Its maximum speed surpassed 400 miles per hour, with a service ceiling exceeding 40,000 feet, heights unimaginable for a Zero. While most fighters of the time mounted guns spread across their wings, the P-38 placed all its firepower in the nose. 4 heavy Browning .50 caliber machine guns and a 20mm cannon. This configuration provided the precision of a spear thrust rather than the scatter of a shotgun blast. A pilot could open fire from hundreds of yards away, directing a stream of bullets and shells straight at the target. However, the Lightning represented more than just an aircraft. It embodied a new way of thinking. American doctrine, long tethered to the idea of escorts and formations, began to evolve under its influence. Instead of turning battles into horizontal spirals where the Zero excelled, P-38 pilots learned to engage vertically. They would climb high, dive with incredible speed, unleash their fire, and then ascend again. The agile but fragile Zero could not keep pace. Attempts to chase at high speeds risked structural failure, and climbing led to stalling and vulnerability. The battlefield itself transformed from a flat arena into a 3-dimensional chessboard where altitude equated to survival. Training reflected this revolution. New squadrons arriving in the Pacific drilled rigorously on tactics. Boom and zoom dives, high-speed yo-yos, barrel rolls that conserved energy while keeping guns trained on the enemy. The mantra became simple, almost sacred. Altitude is life insurance. speed is life. American pilots were warned never to engage in a turn fight with the Zero. Discipline became synonymous with survival. Those who adhered to these principles found victory. By the time Richard Bong joined the 39th Fighter Squadron in late 1942, these doctrines were taking root. He studied not only how the Lightning performed, but also how the enemy operated. Japanese pilots were masters of close-range skirmishes, trained to pursue an opponent's tail and finish with bursts from short-range 7.7mm guns. Bong realized that if he denied them that turning fight, their expertise would be rendered useless. In the P38, he and others could dictate every engagement, when to attack, when to retreat, and when to climb back into the sun. Each improvement to the Lightning only honed its edge. New models brought stronger engines, refined turbo systems, and hydraulically boosted controls that made the large fighter surprisingly nimble at high speeds. By 1943, the P-38J and L variants could roll, dive, and climb with a fluidity that erased the last remnants of Japanese advantage. It was as if technology itself had advanced a generation in a single year. For the pilots, the Lightning became both weapon and shield. Its twin engines provided safety on long missions across vast oceans, where a single failure in a single-engine fighter could mean death. Its range, extended with drop tanks, allowed it to escort bombers deeper into Japanese territory than any other American fighter, and its rugged structure absorbed punishment that would shatter lighter aircraft. Those who entered its cockpit knew they had been given a chance, not just to fight but to survive. What began as a peculiar silhouette on Lockheed's drawing boards had evolved into the harbinger of a new era of combat in the skies over the Solomons and New Guinea. The doctrine of the vertical battlefield was about to be tested in fire, and when steel met sky, the P-38 Lightning would affirm itself as not merely a fighter, but the instrument of a revolution. The first missions of the P-38 Lightning in the Southwest Pacific lacked the glory that history would later bestow upon the aircraft. In late 1942, the men of the 39th Fighter Squadron were simply learning to trust their new machines. Each takeoff from the steel matting of Port Moresby tested both nerves and engines. The Lightning was larger, heavier than any fighter they had flown previously, and its twin booms required precision on the runway. Yet once airborne, the sense of power was unmistakable. The pilots quickly realized that this was not another fragile machine to be coaxed into battle. It was a predator designed to dominate the skies. The earliest sorties were routine patrols, long hours spent scanning the ocean and jungle canopy for enemy signs. Many days passed without contact. Sweat pooled inside cockpits as the tropical sun baked the canopy glass until the air shimmered. Pilots battled drowsiness and boredom, their only companions the steady thrum of the Allison engines and the faint aroma of oil. Ground crews worked tirelessly, patching bullet holes from anti-aircraft fire, checking delicate turbochargers, and keeping the Lightnings combat ready. Life on the Pacific Front was a rhythm of waiting, training, and sudden violence. For Japanese pilots, these new machines were curious intruders. Rumors spread through squadrons that the Americans had deployed a reconnaissance plane or a heavy fighter. Not a true adversary. Some dismissed it entirely. Yet on December 27th, that illusion shattered. Captain Thomas Lynch led his 12 Lightnings into a steep dive through the morning clouds, and in less than 10 minutes the myth of Japanese aerial invincibility was pierced. Zeros that attempted to follow shook violently, their wings on the verge of tearing apart. Those who tried to climb after the Lightning became helpless targets for the Americans, who simply looped back down. From that moment on, the journey of the Lightning was no longer about proving itself, but about dominating the skies. Each mission revealed more of its character. Escorting bombers over New Guinea, The P-38s climbed higher than Japanese interceptors could reach, their drop tanks giving them the endurance to shadow lumbering B-24s across vast distances. When Japanese formations rose to confront them, the lightning struck like hawks from above, scattering the enemy before a single bomber was harmed. For the men inside those cockpits, survival demanded discipline. They had been warned in training never to turn with a zero, and in combat, that warning became law. A pilot who succumbed to instinct and attempted to dogfight risked losing not only his aircraft but his life. Instead, they attacked with cold precision: dive, fire, climb, and reset. Lieutenant Richard Bong epitomized this doctrine, his patience in holding fire until the precise moment. His skill in deflection shooting and his instinct for positioning made him lethal. Within weeks, he scored his first victories, and soon the name Bong carried significant weight across every briefing room in the Pacific. However, the journey into combat also bore a human cost. Losses still occurred, engines failed, navigation went awry, and Japanese ambushes struck from hidden clouds. Pilots who failed to return left behind empty bunks and grieving comrades. The tropical climate eroded machines and men alike. Malaria swept through squadrons, and jungle rot afflicted ground crews who labored barefoot in mud and rain. Yet each successful mission reinforced the bond between the pilot and the aircraft. The Lightning was more than steel and rivets. It became a shield against the relentless Japanese tide. By early 1943, the Lightning had established itself as more than an experimental aircraft. Its long legs carried it deep into contested territory. Its concentrated guns shredded bombers, and its speed allowed for disengagement at will. Japanese after-action reports that once brimmed with triumph now expressed frustration and disbelief. The skies over New Guinea and the Solomons, once adorned with the graceful arcs of Zero dogfights, were transforming into vertical battlegrounds where altitude and speed reigned supreme. The journey had only begun, but already the P-38 was rewriting the narrative of the Pacific Air War. The true measure of the Lightning emerged in the crucible of combat, where entire campaigns hung in the balance. By early 1943, Allied fortunes in the Southwest Pacific were uncertain. Japanese air power still prowled the skies, their bombers pounding Allied positions, and their Zero fighters lying in wait for any American aircraft bold enough to ascend above 15,000 feet. For more than a year, the Imperial Navy's aviators had fought with impunity, guided by doctrines that had never failed them. However, with the arrival of the Lightning in numbers, the balance began to shift. On the morning of January 7, 1943, proof arrived. 9 P-38s took off from Port Moresby to escort a formation of B-25 bombers. The Japanese dispatched 20 fighters to intercept them. By all logic, the Americans should have been overwhelmed. Instead, the Lightnings climbed to 25,000 feet, beyond the reach of their adversaries, and then dove downward like falling stars. Lieutenant Richard Bong swooped from the sun, executing a perfect deflection shot that shattered an Oscar in a single burst. As the Japanese scrambled to ascend after him, Bong executed a chandelier move, bringing his fighter back to altitude. Within moments, he was in position for another strike. The engagement lasted minutes, but its impact rippled through both sides. The Americans had discovered a weapon capable of dictating the terms of battle. The climax came not in isolated dogfights, but in engagements of strategic consequence. In March 1943, during the Battle of the Bismarck Sea, the Lightning proved its worth. Allied bombers targeted a Japanese convoy bound for Leyte 8 transports escorted by destroyers. As waves of B-25s and Beauforts descended, Zero squadrons rose in desperate defense. But overhead, the P-38 swept down in vertical assaults, tearing into the escorts and scattering them before they could reach the bombers. In the ensuing chaos, Allied bombers unleashed low-level skip bombing runs that turned the sea into an inferno. 8 transports and 4 destroyers were sunk, crippling Japanese attempts to reinforce New Guinea. Without the lightning, the bombers would have been decimated long before reaching their targets. Instead, the battle became a decisive Allied victory, aided in part by the P-38's dominance of the skies. If the Bismarck Sea Battle was a victory of strategy, April 18, 1943, marked a victory of precision and audacity. Codebreakers intercepted the travel itinerary of Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, the architect of Pearl Harbor and Japan's most brilliant strategist. He was set to fly from Rabaul to Bougainville for an inspection. The plan to intercept him required perfection. A 435-mile overwater flight from Guadalcanal, radio silence, and dead reckoning navigation. Only the P-38 possessed the range and speed necessary for such a mission. 16 Lightnings from the 339th Fighter Squadron took off at dawn under Major John Mitchell, flying low at wave-top height, engines humming just above the sea spray unseen by Japanese radar. After more than 2 hours, they reached the precise intercept point. Yamamoto's 2 Mitsubishi G4M Betty bombers appeared, flanked by 6 escorts. Captain Thomas Lanfear and Lieutenant Rex Barber dove into attack, and within seconds, Barber's concentrated fire ripped into Yamamoto's bomber, sending it spiraling into the jungle below. Japan's Supreme Naval Commander was dead. The psychological shock was immense. No leader was supposed to be vulnerable, yet here was undeniable proof that American fighters could reach across the Pacific with surgical precision. For Japanese aviators, the skies no longer felt secure. For Americans, the mission became a symbol of vengeance, proof that the tide of war was shifting. By late 1943, the lightning was ubiquitous. Squadrons equipped with the P-38 struck Rabaul, shattered Japanese defenses over New Guinea, and extended their reach into the Bismarcks. Captain Thomas Lynch refined vertical tactics into an art form, amassing 20 victories before his death in 1944. Richard Bong, methodical and fearless, steadily climbed toward becoming America's top ace. In August 1943, another name emerged, Thomas Maguire, whose aggressive style and tactical innovations made him Bong's rival and equal. Together they authored the new doctrine of vertical combat. With their techniques, the barrel roll attack, the high-speed yo-yo, the Maguire roll becoming required study for squadrons across the theater. The Japanese response bordered on desperation. Reports instructed pilots to avoid engaging P-38s above 15,000 feet unless overwhelmingly outnumbered. Even then, attacks were to be swift and disengagement immediate. The once proud Zero, once a symbol of invincibility, had been reduced to a cautious defender. New aircraft were rushed into service. The Khe-61 Tony, the Khe-44 Shoki, and later the Khe-84 Frank, but none arrived in sufficient numbers to alter the balance. Pilots who once reveled in outmaneuvering their foes now recounted nightmares of twin-boom shadows, diving from unreachable altitudes. Some even requested transfers to ground units rather than face the lightning again. Every significant battle contributed to the P-38's growing reputation. In November 1943, American lightnings swept the skies over the Solomons so thoroughly that Japanese daylight operations nearly ceased. Ships moved only under the cover of darkness, and supplies reached front lines via submarine or destroyer dashes at night. The empire that once confidently spanned the Pacific was being strangled from the air, its lifelines severed by relentless lightning patrols. For the men flying them, these victories came at a heavy cost. Missions stretched over hundreds of miles of open ocean, where mechanical failure could spell death by drowning or capture. Combat was sudden and brutal, with seconds of violence followed by hours of solitude. Yet the lightning inspired confidence. Pilots spoke of its strength, its forgiving nature in a dive, and its ability to bring them home even on one engine. Each victory wasn't just a triumph of technology, it was a testament to survival. By the dawn of 1944, the Pacific Air War had transformed. The horizontal spirals of early campaigns had vanished, replaced by vertical duels in which altitude and energy dictated fate. The Lightning had proven itself not just a participant but the decisive weapon that cut through Japanese air power. The climax had arrived, signaling the end of Japanese dominance in the skies. The months following the Lightning's ascent were devastating for Japanese air power. Reports flowing into Rabaul and Tokyo painted a bleak picture. Squadrons that had once returned victorious were coming home shattered or not at all. The familiar patterns of combat, the horizontal turning duels that had defined Japanese doctrine, had disappeared. In their place stood a new battlefield defined by altitude, speed, and firepower terrain, in which the Zero and its pilots could no longer compete. Casualties mounted alarmingly. The 251st Air Group began 1943 with 80 seasoned pilots. By the year's end, only 10 remained. The 204th Air Group lost 70% of its aviators in 6 months of fighting over New Guinea, while the 582nd was withdrawn entirely after losing 4 out of 5 aircraft in just weeks. Japan's capacity to replace these losses was crippled by shortages of aluminum, fuel, and engines. Training pipelines that once produced masters of aerobatic combat were reduced to mere months, sending novices into the skies with barely 100 flight hours. Many had never flown above 20,000 feet before encountering the P38 in combat, and against veterans armed with superior machines, they were lambs to the slaughter. For American pilots, the contrast was stark. Losses did occur. Mechanical failures, accidents, ambushes, but the balance remained sustainable. Air-sea rescue operations retrieved many survivors from the ocean, returning them to duty within weeks. Damaged Lightnings were repaired and flown again, their rugged frames absorbing punishment that would have destroyed a Zero. Industrial might ensured that every aircraft lost was replaced many times over. By March 1943, Lockheed was producing 10 new P-38s daily, and by year's end, more than 2,000 had entered service. The psychological consequences ran deeper than mere numbers. For the first time since Pearl Harbor, American pilots flew with confidence. They recognized their advantage, and that knowledge emboldened them to fight aggressively. Altitude is life insurance became more than a phrase. It evolved into a creed that transformed fear into discipline. Missions that once felt like desperate gambles morphed into opportunities. The Lightning granted its pilots not just survival but mastery. On the Japanese side, despair began to seep into letters and diaries. Captured documents revealed pilots tormented by nightmares of twin-tailed demons diving from the sun. Some expressed feelings of helplessness, firing bursts that fell short as the Lightning simply vanished upward. Others requested transfers to ground duty rather than continue battling an enemy that refused to play by the old rules. For a warrior culture built on honor and aggression, the shift to defensive fleeting attacks was a profound humiliation, as deep as the losses themselves. The battlefield adapted accordingly. By late 1943, Japanese daylight operations in the Solomons had virtually ceased. Convoys moved only at night, and supplies that once traveled openly across the seas now crept forward via submarine or destroyer. The once mighty naval air force that had masterminded Pearl Harbor and triumphed in the early Pacific was reduced to defensive shadows. Each defeat widened the gulf, each lightning victory pressed the knife deeper. For the Allies, the stakes were both strategic and tactical. The Lightning's long range enabled bombers to strike targets once deemed untouchable. Reconnaissance variants mapped enemy positions with impunity. Air superiority, once a distant dream, was becoming reality, and the Japanese could no longer safeguard their bases, fleets, or even their leaders. The death of Admiral Yamamoto epitomized this shift. No one was beyond the Lightning's reach. The aftermath was not merely a collapse of Japanese air power, but the dawn of a new chapter in the Pacific War. With the skies secured, Allied ground forces advanced, supply lines flowed, and operations that had seemed unattainable under the Zero's shadow became inevitable under the Lightning's protection. The consequences were calculated not just in aircraft destroyed, but in entire campaigns turned from doubt to victory. The Zero had entered the war as a legend, but by the end of 1943, it had become a relic, still dangerous, still deadly in the hands of an expert, but no longer the master of the sky. The Lightning had claimed that crown. The cost to Japan was catastrophic, while the reward for America extended beyond mere air dominance. It was the momentum that would propel its forces across the Pacific toward ultimate victory. When the war in the Pacific finally concluded, the P-38 Lightning had already secured its place in history. More than just a fighter, it had heralded a new era in aerial combat. Between December 1942 and January 1945, Lightning squadrons claimed over 1,500 confirmed victories in the Southwest Pacific while losing fewer than 200 of their own. The astonishing kill ratio of 7-to-1 spoke not only to the aircraft's power, but also to the doctrine and discipline forged around it. Yet, the legacy of the Lightning cannot be quantified by numbers alone. It transformed the psychology of warfare. Japanese pilots who had entered the conflict with unwavering confidence came to dread the twin-tailed silhouette diving from the sun. Their dominance, once unquestioned, was shattered by a machine that excelled in 3 dimensions rather than 2. American aviators, once outmatched, discovered through the Lightning a newfound sense of mastery. The sky was no longer a realm of desperation, but a domain of control. For individual pilots, the Lightning became inseparable from their identities. Richard Bong, who achieved 40 aerial victories, remains America's highest-scoring ace. Thomas McGuire, with 38 victories, codified tactics that became doctrine for generations. Countless others, though less celebrated, wrote their own chapters of valor in its cockpit. Their experiences shaped not only the outcome of the Pacific War, but also the identity of the U.S. Army Air Forces as it evolved into the modern Air Force. The aircraft's influence extended far beyond the battlefields. Post-war jet designs carried forward the lessons first proven in the Lightning. Speed and altitude became paramount, while concentrated firepower and energy management emerged as keys to victory. From the F-86 Sabre over Korea to the multi-role fighters of the jet age, echoes of the P-38's philosophy endured in every ascent toward the stratosphere, and every dive through the thin air of combat. The vertical battlefield pioneered by the Lightning remained alive even decades later. Today, restored Lightnings perform at air shows, their twin booms gleaming in the sun, engines roaring like thunder across fields of spectators. Museums preserve their stories, and veterans who once entrusted their lives to the aircraft's steel frame recall the confidence it instilled in them on Pacific islands. Wrecks still lie in jungles and lagoons, silent testaments to the ferocity of the battles once fought. For those who discover them, local villagers, historians, travelers, they are relics of a moment when the future of the world hung in the balance. The enduring significance of the P-38 Lightning is not only that it won battles but that it transformed warfare itself. It demonstrated that technology, industry, and doctrine combined could overcome even the fiercest of opponents. It illustrated that courage and innovation, when united, could dismantle legends and forge new ones. Ultimately, the Lightning's legacy serves as both a triumph and a warning. That air supremacy belongs not to tradition or pride, but to those who adapt swiftly, reach the highest, and strike the hardest. The twin-boom fighter that once astonished Japanese pilots in the Solomons remains, to this day, a symbol of how rapidly the tides of war can shift. Apologies, but it seems you may have reached the end of the content you provided. If you have a specific topic or new direction you would like to explore, please let me know and I will be happy to assist. It seems I don't have any additional text to continue from the previous content you provided. However, I can certainly create a new segment related to the P-38 Lightning, its impact on the Pacific War, or delve into another subject of your choice. Here's a continuation focusing on the legacy of the P-38 and its broader implications. As the war in the Pacific unfolded and the P-38 Lightning carved out its legacy, the aircraft became more than just a tool of destruction. It represented a shift in military strategy and technology that would influence air power for decades to come. The lessons learned from the P-38 would resonate throughout the development of future aircraft and the evolution of air combat doctrine. In the post-war era, the principles established by the P-38's design and operational success informed the development of jet fighters. The emphasis on speed, altitude, and firepower became foundational elements in the design of subsequent aircraft. Fighters like the F-86 Sabre and later models integrated these lessons, showcasing the importance of agility and versatility in aerial warfare. The P-38's ability to engage in high-altitude combat and its innovative design set a precedent that would guide engineers and tacticians in shaping the future of air power. Moreover, the P-38's success helped to cement the role of the U.S. Army Air Forces as a critical component of military strategy. With the war's conclusion, the Air Forces gained recognition as an independent branch of the military, ultimately leading to the establishment of the United States Air Force as a separate entity in 1947. This shift marked a fundamental change in how air power was perceived and utilized in military operations, emphasizing the need for strategic air superiority in modern warfare. The psychological impact of the P-38 Lightning extended beyond its immediate victories. It transformed the morale of American forces, instilling a sense of confidence that had been lacking in the early years of the war. The successes of pilots like Richard Bong and Thomas Maguire became legendary, serving as inspirational figures for future generations of aviators. Their accomplishments not only showcased the capabilities of the Lightning, but also highlighted the importance of adaptability and innovation in combat. In addition, the P-38's design and performance contributed to the United States' ability to project power across vast distances in the Pacific. Its long range allowed for deep penetration missions that showcased American air power and logistical capabilities. This ability to strike targets far from home bases became a hallmark of U.S. military strategy in subsequent conflicts, reinforcing the notion that air superiority was crucial for achieving broader strategic objectives. As the Cold War began, the legacy of the P-38 Lightning continued to influence military aviation. The emphasis on speed, firepower, and altitude management became integral to the development of supersonic jets and multi-role fighters, shaping the landscape of air combat throughout the latter half of the 20th century. The lessons learned in the Pacific theater would inform tactics, training, and aircraft design as nations adapted to the changing dynamics of warfare. Today, the P-38 Lightning remains a symbol of innovation and resilience, Its unique design and operational history are celebrated at air shows and in museums, where enthusiasts and historians gather to honor the aircraft and the brave pilots who flew it. Restored P-38s take to the skies, drawing crowds and inspiring awe, reminding us of a pivotal moment in history when technology, courage, and strategy converged to alter the course of a war. In the broader context of military history, the P-38 serves as a reminder of the importance of adaptability in the face of adversity. It demonstrated that even in the most challenging circumstances, innovation and determination could lead to remarkable achievements. The twin-boom fighter not only changed the dynamics of aerial combat, but also reshaped the very essence of air power itself, proving that in warfare, those who dare to innovate will often emerge victorious. As we reflect on the legacy of the P-38 Lightning, we recognize that its impact extends far beyond its time in the skies. It forged a path for future generations of aviators and set a standard for what is possible in military aviation. In the ever-evolving landscape of warfare, the principles that guided the P-38 continue to resonate, reminding us that the pursuit of excellence in design and strategy is timeless. If there is a specific aspect or detail you would like me to expand upon further, or if you have another topic in mind, please let me know. As we delve deeper into the legacy of the P-38 Lightning, it becomes evident that its influence extends beyond mere military victories and technological advancements. The aircraft also played a significant role in shaping the narratives of the Pacific War, influencing public perception and morale both at home and on the front lines of cultural impact and public perception. The P-38 Lightning quickly became an icon of American air power. Its distinctive twin-boom design and remarkable performance captured the imagination of both military personnel and civilians. Propaganda efforts during the war highlighted the aircraft's successes, portraying it as a symbol of American ingenuity and resilience. Stories of heroic pilots like Richard Bong, who became a household name, fueled a sense of pride and unity among the American public. This cultural impact contributed to the overall war effort, as citizens felt more connected to the soldiers fighting overseas. In post-war America, the P-38 continued to be celebrated in popular culture. It appeared in films, documentaries, and literature, solidifying its status as a legendary aircraft. The stories of dogfights over the Pacific, the daring missions of its pilots, and the dramatic confrontations with Japanese forces became part of the larger narrative of World War II. This enduring fascination with the P-38 reflects not only its technological prowess, but also the human stories of bravery and sacrifice that accompanied it, legacy and military doctrine. The P-38 Lightning's operational success also had a profound impact on military doctrine beyond World War II. The concept of vertical combat prioritized by the P-38's design and tactics was integrated into training programs for future generations of pilots. The emphasis on maintaining altitude advantage and executing energy-efficient maneuvers became fundamental components of air combat strategy. As air forces around the world evolved, the lessons learned from the P-38 were applied to the development of fighter tactics in subsequent conflicts, including the Korean War and the Vietnam War. The importance of speed, agility, and situational awareness remained central to air combat principles, influencing how air forces approached engagements against adversaries. Technological advancements. Inspired by the P-38. The innovative design elements of the P-38 laid the groundwork for future aircraft development. Engineers and designers took inspiration from its twin-boom configuration, which offered advantages in aerodynamics and structural integrity. The concentrated firepower in the nose became a model for subsequent fighters, emphasizing the need for precision in aerial combat. The P-38's success also encouraged further research into turbo-supercharged engines, high-altitude performance, and advanced materials that would shape the next generation of military aircraft. The pursuit of speed and efficiency initiated a technological arms race, resulting in the development of jet fighters that would dominate the skies in the post-war era. Aviation heritage and preservation today, the P-38 Lightning is revered not just as a military aircraft but as a piece of aviation heritage. Numerous restorations and airworthy examples serve as reminders of its historical significance. Aviation enthusiasts and historians work tirelessly to preserve the stories and experiences of those who flew the Lightning, ensuring that future generations understand its role in shaping air combat. Air shows featuring the P-38 draw crowds, evoking nostalgia and admiration. Pilots who fly restored Lightnings often share stories of their experiences and the legacy of the aircraft, fostering a sense of connection to the past. Museums dedicated to World War II aviation feature exhibits showcasing the P-38, educating visitors about its contributions to the war and the technological advancements it represented. Conclusion: a lasting legacy. The P-38 Lightning stands as a testament to the power of innovation, adaptability, and the human spirit in the face of adversity. Its impact on the Pacific War, military doctrine, and aviation technology cannot be overstated. As a symbol of American air power, it continues to inspire awe and respect, reminding us of the bravery of the pilots who flew it and the engineers who designed it. In the broader context of military history, the P-38 serves as a reminder that the tides of war can shift rapidly, and those who embrace change and innovation will often prevail. Its legacy endures not just in the annals of history, but in the hearts and minds of those who value courage, ingenuity, and the relentless pursuit of excellence in the skies. As we reflect on the P-38 Lightning, we acknowledge that it was not merely an aircraft. It was a pioneer that transformed the landscape of aerial combat and left an indelible mark on the history of warfare. Its story is a rich tapestry woven from the threads of strategy, heroism, and technological advancement. A story that continues to resonate today and will undoubtedly influence future generations of aviators and military strategists. If there are specific areas or themes you'd like to explore further, or if you have a different subject in mind, feel free to let me know. As we move forward in acknowledging the P-38 Lightning's enduring legacy, it's essential to consider the broader implications of its design and operational philosophy in the context of modern air warfare. Integration of multi-role capabilities. One of the most significant influences of the P-38 Lightning was its embodiment of multi-role capabilities. The aircraft was not only a fighter but also served effectively in roles such as reconnaissance, ground attack, and bomber escort. This versatility became a benchmark for future military aircraft, emphasizing the necessity for modern fighters to perform multiple functions in a single platform. The idea of an aircraft capable of fulfilling various roles without compromising performance became a standard in military aviation. This philosophy paved the way for the development of multi-role fighters like the F/A-18 Hornet and the F-35 Lightning II, which integrate advanced technologies to adapt to diverse combat scenarios. The P-38 demonstrated that an aircraft could be both a formidable fighter and an effective tool for other mission profiles, influencing designs that followed in the decades to come. The role of women in aviation. The P-38 Lightning also played a part in highlighting the contributions of women in aviation during World War II. Female pilots, part of the Women Air Force Service Pilots (WASP), flew various military aircraft, including the P-38, to free up male pilots for combat duties. Their involvement in the P-38 program and other aircraft helped to pave the way for future generations of women in aviation and military service. The stories of these women, who flew dangerous missions and contributed to the war effort, became an essential part of the narrative surrounding the P-38. Their bravery and skill challenged societal norms and opened doors for women in the military, leading to greater inclusion and recognition in subsequent conflicts and peacetime service. Technological innovations and future designs. The P-38's design innovations also had a lasting impact on aerodynamics and engineering practices. The aircraft's unique twin-boom structure provided insights into aircraft stability and control, influencing subsequent designs in both military and civilian aviation. Engineers learned valuable lessons in weight distribution, structural integrity, and performance at various altitudes. Furthermore, the P-38 was one of the first aircraft to feature a fully enclosed cockpit, improving pilot comfort and visibility. This focus on pilot ergonomics would shape future aircraft designs, leading to advancements in cockpit layout and instrumentation that prioritize pilot efficiency and situational awareness. Lessons in combat strategy. The combat strategies developed around the P-38 Lightning also transformed military tactics. Its ability to operate at high altitudes and engage in vertical combat shifted how air battles were fought. The emphasis on energy management, positioning, and the importance of altitude became central tenets in air combat training. These lessons have continued to resonate in modern air forces around the world. Tactics that prioritize energy conservation and altitude advantage are still taught in fighter pilot training programs today. The P-38's legacy in combat strategy serves as a reminder that adapting to the evolving battlefield is crucial for success. The P-38 in popular culture and memorialization. In addition to its military and technological impact, the P-38 Lightning has left an indelible mark on popular culture. Its distinctive silhouette and storied history have made it a favorite subject in films, books, and documentaries. Movies that depict aerial combat in World War II often feature the P-38, celebrating its role in the conflict and preserving its legacy in the public consciousness. Moreover, various memorials and events commemorate the P-38 and its pilots. Annual air shows and gatherings dedicated to World War II aircraft often include P-38s, allowing enthusiasts to witness the aircraft in flight and learn about its historical significance. These events foster a sense of community among aviation aficionados and veterans, ensuring that the stories of those who flew the Lightning are passed on to future generations. Conclusion: the P-38's enduring influence. As we reflect on the P-38 Lightning, it is clear that its influence transcends its time in the skies during World War II. It represents a convergence of innovation, strategy, and human courage that reshaped military aviation. The aircraft's legacy continues to inspire engineers, aviators, and historians alike, reminding us of the profound impact that one design can have on the course of history. The P-38 serves as a powerful symbol of how the combination of technology and human ingenuity can overcome formidable challenges. It stands as a testament to the evolution of air power, demonstrating that adaptability, versatility, and innovation are essential in the ever-changing landscape of warfare. In an age where technological advancements continue to redefine the nature of conflict, the lessons learned from the P-38 Lightning remain relevant. It exemplifies the importance of embracing change, pushing boundaries, and striving for excellence, principles that will undoubtedly guide the future of military aviation for years to come. As we honor the legacy of the P-38, we not only celebrate its triumphs, but also recognize the countless individuals who contributed to its success, ensuring that their stories, along with the aircraft, are never forgotten. The P-38 Lightning will forever be etched in history, a beacon of innovation, resilience, and the enduring spirit of those who fought for freedom in the skies.